Whoever said that Monaco was the most boring race on the F1 calendar has got to be just eating their words today, okay? It totally wasn't me on my preview podcast. Welcome to the Formula BONE F1 Show's 2022 Monaco Grand Prix Recap. I am Jared Borislow, but you can call me J-Bone. Let's get into it today, folks. J-Bone! On my Monaco Grand Prix preview podcast, I gave you 3 storylines to follow throughout the race weekend. Let's see how those shaped up. First up, did Charles Leclerc overcome his Monaco curse? Now, the answer to that is yes and no. If you think that the Monaco curse is that Charles Leclerc was cursed to never finish a race at Monaco, then that curse is broken as he finished P4. But if you think that the Monaco curse is that Charles Leclerc was cursed to have bad luck at Monaco forever because a warlock put a curse on him, then that curse is very much still alive, as he, of course, started the race in pole position and then did not even wind up on the podium for reasons I will get into later on this episode in a lot of depth, so get ready for that. I spent quite a lot of time researching it and listening to team radio and looking at footage. So hopefully, if you are going into this episode not understanding how Ferrari biffed it so badly at Monaco, you will leave the episode having a full understanding. The second storyline was, can Max Verstappen extend his current Grand Prix winning streak to 4 in a row? The answer to that is just no. It's not like the last one where there was a yes and a no. It's just no. Of course, Checo Perez won the 2022 Monaco Grand Prix, becoming the first Mexican driver to win Formula One's most prestigious race, as well as the winningest Mexican Formula One driver of all time. And he did all that while wearing a helmet paying tribute to the man whose record he broke, his idol, Mexican F1 legend Pedro Rodriguez. Fun fact, both the Monaco Grand Prix winner and Indy 500 winner this past weekend were wearing helmets paying tribute to legendary Formula One drivers from their home countries, with Marcus Ericsson winning the Indy 500 wearing a helmet paying tribute to Swedish F1 legend Ronnie Peterson. Now, if you didn't tear up when Checo waved the Mexican flag around the circuit and or when he himself teared up on the podium during the Mexican national anthem, you have a curse on you just like Charles Leclerc has a curse on him, except your curse is that you were cursed to have no soul. Because I'm telling you, after that race, my apartment was pretty dusty. And I had something in my eye. Both of those things combined to make me cry a lot. The final storyline was, are we all going to get Lance Strolled at Monaco again this year? Unfortunately, we did not get Lance Strolled at Monaco again this year. Though, in classic Monaco fashion, there were quite a few broadcast errors, especially during FP1, and also during the race, when at one point Crofty and Martin Brundle's video feed for them just cut out, and they were like, we can't see anything. It's kind of funny. Now, let's discuss some additional storylines that have not been covered yet, and that won't be covered by way of the upcoming listener voicemails called into the Bone phone. First up, did Esteban Ocon deserve that penalty at Monaco that dropped him out of the points? After making contact with Lewis Hamilton at Saint Devote, Ocon was handed a 5-second time penalty that would end up taking him from a P9 points finish out of the points down to P12. Immediately after the race, Ocon said this to his race engineer, quote, "It's a joke, guys. It is a joke. They can't take the result away like that. This is favoritism. Crash into me, you get the penalty. What is this? We can't see in the mirrors here." Ocon spoke to the stewards after the race, and they told him that last year it would have been deemed a racing incident, but not this year, because it was apparently agreed upon by the Grand Prix Drivers Association between this season and last that as soon as there is a front wing next to a tire, there should be space given, and the stewards believe that Ocon did not leave Hamilton that space. While I do think it is a little harsh for Ocon to have been penalized considering how narrow Monaco is, this is actually a good ruling for spectators, as it may encourage drivers to try and send it on the inside more often if they now know that the defending driver may get penalized if they try to close the door too aggressively. So this could be kind of like a landmark ruling, you know? could cause a little bit more excitement in the sport. We shall see. Second, that Monaco Grand Prix race start delay was pretty annoying at the time, but I kind of get it now. With how much it rained right after the race would have started, I do think we almost certainly would have gotten a red flag anyways from someone hitting a barrier, probably Latifi again. I think race control looked at the radar and saw this amount of rain that was coming, which was a lot, which is why they decided to delay the race start in the name of driver safety and damage limitation to cars, barriers, etc. Now, this situation brings up an interesting point. Do you think race control should make race decisions based on weather forecasts or just on the active weather situation at the circuit? Let me know in the YouTube comments of this podcast or in the general F1 banter channel of the Formula Bone Discord, a link to which you will find in the description of this episode. Third, George Russell's 2022 hot streak continues to continue. With his P5 at Monaco, George Russell has still finished in the top 5 of every single Grand Prix this season and remains the only driver to score at least 1 point in every single 2022 race. This man is the driver of the season thus far, without a question, in my opinion, and I really think at this point he will finish the 2022 season ahead of Lewis Hamilton in the World Drivers' Championship. And finally, during his Monaco victory celebration, Checo let slip that he had already signed a contract extension with Red Bull before the race weekend. So Checo was caught on camera saying to Christian Horner after the race, quote, "I probably signed too early," and then laughing, which was Checo making a joke to Christian that if he'd waited to sign his new contract until after Monaco's P1 result, he probably could have demanded more money. Pretty good joke, but a joke that kind of, let the cat out of the bag. Because when asked about this quote in an interview shortly after he let it slip, he didn't deny it. So we can all assume he will be back at Red Bull next season. And I, for one, think he really, truly deserves it as he's been driving incredibly well this season. Who doesn't love Checo? What a guy. I'm so happy for him. Like I said, teared up after watching the race. What an emotional moment. Couldn't happen to a better guy. Speaking of being happy, every day is a happy one for your thighs when they're wearing the greatest shorts known to man, Birddogs shorts, baby. Birddogs makes the best shorts you will ever wear, I promise you. And right now, you can get a free Birddogs dad hat with your order when you use code FBONE at checkout on birddogs.com. That's FBONE, FBONE, for a free dad hat when you buy the most insanely comfortable leg coverings on planet Earth. I'm wearing Birddog shorts all summer long because you can do anything in them. Wear them while watching Formula One, working out, playing sports, sleeping, punching air after watching Charles Leclerc get incorrectly brought in for a pit stop, and even swimming. Birddog shorts are the best because you can get them with built-in underwear, and it feels better on your skin than the finest silk sheets, and is also super breathable, does not bunch up like traditional underwear, and is quick drying. Now, as far as the free dad hat goes, I'm wearing mine right now, and I have never felt more like a father despite not having any children. Go to birddogs.com right now, enter promo code FBONE, and they'll throw in that free dad hat with your order. You will not want to ever take your Birddogs off, I promise you. I never take mine off. I'm actually wearing a pair of Birddogs joggers, not shorts right now because I'm in the studio recording. It's kind of cold in here. But I wear Birddogs all the time. Shorts, joggers, pants, the dad hat that I'm literally wearing right now. It's great stuff. There's a link for that deal in the description of this episode. Thank you to Birddogs for supporting the Formula Bone F1 show. Of course, I need to now check in with you all regarding how my 3 bona fide race predictions fared at the Monaco Grand Prix. My first race prediction was that Charles Leclerc would break his Monaco curse and win the Monaco Grand Prix. Yay, Leclerc. You did it. Yeah, neither of those two things happened, it turns out. This man is cursed. It's not my fault that I was wrong. It was the curse's fault. And that makes me feel better. My second race prediction was that we would see 2 Red Bulls on the podium at the Monaco Grand Prix. And ding ding, J-Bone. Got that right. J-Bone. My third and final race prediction was that both Sebastian Vettel and Esteban Ocon would finish in the points at the Monaco Grand Prix. And Vettel did, but literally only because Ocon didn't, because of the 5-second time penalty that Ocon got that dropped him out of the points and bumped Vettel up into them. Now, what I should have predicted was that both Vettel and Ocon would finish in the top 10, because technically they both did. Ocon did before his penalty, and Vettel did after Ocon's penalty. That would have been an all-time spin zone if I had said in the top 10, because I 100% would have doubled down and been like, I was right. See, they did both finish in the top 10. Now I know that going 1.5 for 3 is not ideal, especially after going 2.5 for 3 last time around. But guess what, folks? Next week, J-Bone is going 3 for 3 and getting them all right. I promise, okay? I promise. Next up, it's time to respond to some Monaco-themed voicemails left by Formula BONE F1 Show listeners on the Bone Phone. If you're new to the Formula BONE F1 Show, welcome. I'm J-Bone. I hope you're having a good time. After every race this season, I do one of these race recap podcasts, and a large part of them is me responding to some of the voicemails left by Formula BONE F1 Show listeners on the Bone Phone, the number for which is 1-833-200-0966. So during or after each race this season, whenever you have an interesting thought, hot take, complaint, or anything else like that, make sure to give the Bone Phone a ring for a chance at your voicemail being played on the podcast like the voicemails I'm about to play are. That number again is 1-833-200-0966, and it is in the description of this episode. Now, without further ado, let's get to the first call.
Can you explain what went wrong with Ferrari for them to go from 1 and 2 on the starting grid to finishing 2 and 4?
Here's how Ferrari's mistakes took them from P1 and P2 on the 2022 Monaco Grand Prix starting grid to finishing the race in P2 and P4. Both Ferraris and both Red Bulls were on full wet tires from the start of the race until the end of lap 16, when Checo came in for intermediate tires after seeing the success that drivers like Pierre Gasly were having on them. At this point, Leclerc was 8.3 seconds ahead of Checo, and Sainz was 2.9 seconds ahead of Checo, so the Ferraris were not too worried. Now this is where things start to go bad. In order to prevent Checo from undercutting Sainz and taking P2 from him with his new intermediate tires, while Sainz was of course still on the slower wets, they called Sainz in to box to match Checo on the intermediate tires, wanting him to come in at the end of the next lap, lap 17. But Sainz thought this was a bad idea, and during what was supposed to be his lap 17 in-lap into the pits for the intermediates, he and Ferrari had a lengthy radio discussion about how Sainz thought the circuit would be dry enough for the dry weather slick tires in about 5 or 6 laps, meaning that pitting for intermediates now would be a bad call because they would just have to come in for another pit stop shortly afterwards. After twice telling Sainz to box, Ferrari eventually tell him to in fact stay out like he asked for. But this conversation around pitting Sainz took so long that Ferrari did not have time to tell Leclerc to pit for intermediates at the end of lap 17 and cover off Checo himself instead of Sainz covering him off. This delay meant Leclerc would have to come in at the end of lap 18 for intermediates to try and close off Checo, but that extra lap on faster tires gave Checo enough time to successfully undercut Leclerc, who came out of the pits 3.3 seconds behind Checo. Ferrari team principal Mattia Binotto would later admit that Ferrari underestimated the pace of the intermediate tires relative to the wets, meaning they did not think Checo's undercut would be successful. Now, Leclerc could have prevented Checo's undercut from happening by protesting the pit decision just like Sainz had, but we later learned that Leclerc didn't protest because he did not even know that he was going to be on intermediates. Okay? There was a huge communication error here. So let's rewind and get the full story. On lap 14, Leclerc told his race engineer the circuit was drying up quickly. On lap 15, Leclerc's race engineer asked Leclerc what he thought of going straight from full wets to slicks and skipping over the intermediates, to which Leclerc replied, Yeah, could be a thing, but not now. 3 laps later, on lap 18, Leclerc said Inters would be much quicker for sure, in a late response to his race engineer saying the previous lap that Checo was now on Inters. But when Leclerc was told to pit later that lap, he was not asked if he wanted Inters or slicks, nor told that Checo was on to undercut him, because again, Ferrari underestimated Checo's pace on the intermediates. So it caused this crazy lapse in communication where Leclerc had been told a strategy about going right onto slicks, and he had also talked about going on to intermediates, and he had no idea what he was going on to. He has said that he did not know he was going on to intermediates. Surely, if Leclerc had known Checo was about to undercut him, Leclerc would have either asked to stay out or for slicks to be put on rather than intermediates if he thought the circuit was dry enough, so that he wasn't coming out of the pits behind Checo and on the same tires as Checo. So that was Ferrari's first big mistake, and it was a huge one that ruined Charles Leclerc's chance of winning the race. But at this stage, Ferrari could still salvage 2 podium positions as Leclerc was still ahead of Verstappen and Sainz was in P1. That is, until their second big mistake, which came when they attempted to execute a double stack pit stop by putting slick tires on Sainz and Leclerc back to back. After seeing the crazy fast sector times the cars on slicks were doing, Ferrari jumped to get slicks on their drivers as fast as possible. The fastest way to do so, of course, being putting them on both cars, pitting on the same lap by way of a double stack pit stop. Now, a double stack pit stop only works when you get the timing just right so that the second driver is not held up at all in the pit lane while waiting for the first driver's pit stop to be completed. Ferrari originally thought there was enough of a time buffer for them to pit Sainz and then Leclerc back to back without any delay for Leclerc, but it turns out that they misjudged how fast Leclerc on intermediates was gaining on Sainz, still on his original full wet tires, on the in-lap. Where have you heard it before that Ferrari misjudged the speed of the intermediates versus the wets? Really, that right there was the cause of their entire downfall for the whole day. By the time Ferrari realized a double stack was not going to work because Leclerc had gained too much on Sainz, Leclerc's race engineer yelled at him to stay out on team radio, but Leclerc had already committed to entering the pit lane. Now, Leclerc ended up losing 3.5 seconds waiting behind Sainz in the pit lane, crucial seconds that eventually put him behind Max Verstappen after Max did his pit stop for slicks the following lap. Had Leclerc stayed out and not gone in, let's say the race engineer had gotten him that message just a little bit earlier and he had time to stay out, right? Leclerc would have pitted the same lap Max did the following lap and come out ahead of him in P3. But at this point, even with these 2 colossal mistakes that ruined Charles Leclerc's day, took him out of the top 3, Ferrari could still somehow salvage a P1 in the race by way of Carlos Sainz, who was on a good tire strategy and just needed a good outlap on his new slick tires to undercut both Red Bulls as they did their double stack pit stop. And what happened? Sainz had a bad outlap. Why, you may ask? Because he was stuck behind none other than Nicholas Latifi, who slowed Sainz down just enough to where he would wind up between Checo and Max in P2, where he would eventually finish the race. I hope that breakdown made sense. I think the broadcast did not do the best job of telling the full story of how Ferrari turned a 1-2 start into a 2-4 finish, so I hope I did. Hey Ferrari, a word of advice. Leave the double stack to Wendy's. Next call.
What up, J-Bone? It's Graham calling you from North Carolina again. I just wanted to do a huge shout out for Checo. What do you think this means going forward? Do you think Checo's going to start disobeying some team orders and trying to get some more wins on the board? Do you think he's going to be a happy camper and continue to listen to Red Bull's direction going forward? Personally, I feel like once I get that taste of victory, I'm not going to slow down anymore. So interested to see how this plays out for the rest of the year.
This is a phenomenal question. Just 1 week removed from begrudgingly giving up his shot at a Grand Prix victory to obey team orders, Checo wins his first Grand Prix of 2022 and just the third of his career. He also is now just 15 points back from his first place teammate Max Verstappen in the World Drivers' Championship, and with Max's car reliability issues this season, it is entirely possible that Checo could end up leading the World Drivers' Championship after the next race in Azerbaijan. A fun thought experiment: all Checo needs to take the solo lead in the World Drivers' Championship after the next race in Baku is for just the exact same result as last year to happen. P1 for him, a DNF for Max, and Leclerc to get literally any result but P2 with fastest lap. It's already happened before, so you can't convince me that it won't happen again. Heck, if Checo wins the Azerbaijan Grand Prix and Max finishes as high as 6th with fastest lap, Checo would still take the championship lead. I'm just saying, we could have a Checo atop the leaderboard after the next race. And yes, Checo is a proven team player, but he's never had to be a team player while also having a shot at winning the World Drivers' Championship. I'm just saying, watch out for Checo and get your popcorn ready, because this could be the start of something highly dramatic and even more entertaining. Next call.
This is RJ calling from Michigan. Question for you, J-Bone. What are your thoughts on Mick Schumacher in this stage in his career after the crash that we just had in Monaco? Do you see him being in the proverbial hot seat currently?
My heart dropped when I saw Mick's Monaco crash because, his car was in two pieces, which is always just a terrifying sight, which it also was in two pieces in Saudi Arabia, by the way. What's up with the Haas breaking in two so much? Weird stuff. But thankfully, Mick was A-okay, and the biggest thing that he and Mick fans everywhere have to worry about from the crash is what it means for Mick's F1 future. This is the second car Mick has irreparably annihilated in just 7 races, and he still hasn't scored a point in his career despite his current teammate Kevin Magnussen finishing as high as 5th in a race and scoring points on 3 separate occasions. Now, Mick's definitely got talent, of which we've definitely seen glimpses, and he's still young and developing, but this Monaco crash is yet another bump in the road for him when he needs some smooth pavement already. I think Mick needs to start scoring some points soon if he wants to be thought of as someone who can stay in the sport long term. Now, hopefully, once Haas finally introduce their upgrades this summer, he'll be able to show us more of what he's got, if not sooner. And the sooner the better. That's it for today's episode of the Formula Bone F1 show. If you enjoyed the show and want to help me out, I would really appreciate it if you could toss me a subscription, like, comment, review, rating, or any other form of engagement on whatever platform you are on right now, so that said platform and its algorithm like J-Bone more. I respond to pretty much every YouTube comment, and if you don't believe me, try it out. For Formula One updates between now and my Azerbaijan Grand Prix preview podcast, you can follow me on all social media at Formula Bone and at my real name, Jared Borislow. That's at JaredBorislow. Until next time, J-Bone!